Good afternoon. Welcome to the September 10th meeting of the
This conference will
Metropolitan
now be
Planning Commission.
recorded.
We'll begin with our public announcement.
Before we begin the agenda, the Wichita-Sedgwick County Metropolitan Area Planning Commission and the Wichita-Sedgwick County Board of Zoning Appeals would like to take this opportunity to welcome everyone to this public hearing. For those at Century 2, copies of the agenda for today's meeting, the public hearing procedure and Planning Department staff reports on all agenda items are available in the lobby. The Planning Commission's and the BZA's bylaws limit the applicant on a zoning, subdivision, or variance application and his or her representative to a total of 10 minutes of speaking time at the start of the hearing on that item, plus up to 2 minutes at the conclusion of that hearing. All other persons wishing to speak on agenda items are limited to 3 minutes per person. However, if they feel that it is needed and justified, the chairman may extend these times by up to 2 minutes. All speakers are requested to state his or her name and address for the record when beginning to speak. When you are finished speaking, please share your name, address, and the case number on the sheet provided in the room or the GoToMeeting comments box. This will enable staff to notify you if there are any additional proceedings concerning that item. Please note that all written and visual materials you present to the Commission and the Board will be retained by the Secretary as part of the official record. If you are not speaking, but you wish to be notified about future proceedings on a particular case, please provide your contact information to the Planning Department. The Planning Commission and the Board are interested in hearing the views of all persons who wish to express themselves on the agenda items. However, we ask that all speakers please be as courteous and concise as possible and avoid long repetitions of facts or opinions which have already been stated. For your information, the Wichita City Council has adopted a policy for all city zoning items. A copy of this policy is available from the planning staff. The City Council relies on a written record of the Planning Commission hearings and does not conduct its own additional public hearings on these items. The decision of the BZA is final. Any appeal of a decision of the BZA is to district court.
Okay, first item of business is the election of officers. Before we do that, I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you to all the commissioners for you guys' support. It's been a weird and strange year, but I think we've gone through it pretty well. And you guys have done a great job, so I appreciate your work, and I also appreciate all the work the staff has done to get us through this. I know you've had to go above and beyond the call of duty to make that happen, so thank you for that. We will begin with the election of the vice chair by bylaws. We rotate, so the eligible members of the committee that are eligible for vice chair are those that are appointed by the county. That would be Joe Johnson, Joshua Blick, Bill Johnson, Shane Gross, Bob Dewell, and Hugh Nix. Is there a motion?
I move to nominate Bill Johnson.
Second.
We have a motion by Ms. Miles, a second by Mr. Green. Any discussion or other nominations? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No opposition. That vote is unanimous. We now elect the chairman, which comes from the pool of city council. By tradition, that normally goes to the vice chair. That's kind of a training, so I'll assume that that's going to be the case. Is there a motion for the vice? The vice chair goes to the chair, Mr. Green.
I'd make that motion.
We have a motion.
Second.
Second by Mr. Joe Johnson and second by Ms. Miles. All those in favor of that motion signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? No opposition. That is unanimous.
I just wanted to say, Chuck, you've done a great job this year.
Well, thank you.
We really appreciate it.
Ditto. Yes.
We now play musical chairs.
You can be taken out too.
In the form of a motion.
Just whistle.
congratulations, Mr. Bill Johnson, as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I would also like to take this opportunity to kind of play off of what Joe Johnson said. Chuck, you did a great job this year, and along with staff, but you kind of led us through all of this China virus balderdash, and we appreciate everything that you've done to kind of keep us together and keep us cohesive and running the meetings, and thank you very much for your service as chair.
Thank you.
So at this time, we'll go ahead and go through the agenda and figure out which items we need to cover. Starting off with the subdivision committee, we're looking at item 3.1, which is the sub 220-00036, one-step final plat for the Cheney Animal Clinic Edition. Are there any members of the commission that would like to hear this item?
Mr. Green, just a point of order, we need to approve the minutes.
There are no minutes.
Oh. This is August 20. Is there no minutes?
They'll be available
The
next.
minutes will be available at the next meeting.
In parentheses, it
Okay,
says
sorry.
next meeting.
Apologize.
It's okay, thank you very much.
Carry on then.
Thank you for keeping me in check. First, right out the gate. Anybody on the at home that would like to hear this item, or in Century 2? Seeing none, we'll take that one by consent. Item 3.2, subdivision 2020-00037, one-step final plat for Schmiedler, second edition. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear that item? At home, commissioners? How about anybody virtually with this meeting? And anybody in Century 2?
Nobody at Century 2.
Nobody at Century 2, okay.
I'd move for approval of 3.1, 3.2.
Second.
It was moved by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. McKay, to approve by consent. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Moving on to the vacation items. We're looking at vacation number 2020-00021, located at 160 South Rock Road. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear that item? Anybody in Century 2?
No.
Anybody at home virtually? Nobody, so we'll take that one by consent. Item 4.2, vacation 2020-00022, 4921 North Port West Circle. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear that item? Seeing none. Anybody in Century 2?
No.
Nobody in Century 2. Anybody at home virtually? Seeing nobody, we'll take that by consent. Item 4.3, vacation 2020-00031, located at 1100 East 63rd Street South. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item? Anybody in Century 2 that would like to hear this item?
No.
Anybody virtually in on the meeting that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, we'll take that by consent. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve agenda items 4.1, 4.2, 4.3.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Florence. Is there anybody else that would add any discussion points to this? Seeing none. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Move on to the public hearing, starting off with 5.1. We've got conditional 2020 case 00024, located 4231 West Central Avenue, for city conditional use of vehicle sales. Anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item?
I don't want to hear the item, but I do have a question.
Okay. We'll come back and, or we can ask the question now, if it's that simple.
Yeah, can I just, a clarification? Sure. So on this particular case, I was a little bit confused because one, on the recommendation, it says approved, but on the back part, it says the recommendation is denial. So what is that recommendation? Is it approve or denial?
We originally recommended denial. Yeah, go ahead, Kathy.
We recommended approval of the car lot with the condition that the traffic pattern go around the building.
Okay.
And so that's what was approved. We might have had a denial on.
The original recommendation was for denial. This is a rehearing because of a legal notice error, and so this time we brought forward what the planning commission had recommended the first time.
Okay, so this one is for recommendation of approval and not denial.
We are showing now the recommendation consistent with what the planning commission had voted on when we didn't have the legal authority to do that.
Okay, so the second half should say approval then.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm fine then.
Okay,
I just was confused.
thank you. So we'll take that on consent. Next case is a PUD 2020 for 00005, county zone change from rural residential to a PUD for a group residence located at 2221 East, 101st Street North. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item? Seeing none, is there anybody in Century 2 that wants to hear this item?
We have 4 people that wish to speak.
Okay, we'll take this item then. Moving on to 5.3, zone case 2020-00027. It's a zone change from SF5 to TF3 located at 1602 West Dallas. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this item?
Yes. Mr. Foster?
Yes, Mr. Foster, we will hear 5.3. 5.4 is zone case 2020-00028. City zone change from SF5 to TF3 located at 538 North Anna. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, anybody in Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
No?
Anybody at home virtually would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take that one by consent. Item 5.5, zone case number 00029, zone change from limited industrial with a protective overlay 75 to rural residential located at 6701 West 95th Street South. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case?
Yep.
Seeing none, anybody in Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
The applicant is here if there are any questions.
Okay. Anybody at home virtually tuning into the meeting that want to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take 5.5 on consent. Agenda item 5.6, zone change number 00030 from single-family residential to general commercial for development, located at 5136 South Broadway. Is there anybody on the commission that would like to hear this case? Seeing none, anybody at Century 2 that would like to hear this case?
The agent is here if there are any questions.
Okay. Anybody at home tuning in would like to hear this case? Seeing none, we'll take 5.6 on consent.
Mr. Green,
Yes.
I'd move for approval of 5.1, 5.4, 5.5, and 5.6.
1, 5.4, 5, and 6. Okay. Do I have a second for that? Mr. Foster? So,
Question?
yes.
Did we, on 5.1, did we ask if there was anybody at Century 2 or by remote? If they
Yes,
had-
we did.
We did?
Yes, we did.
Okay.
Yes?
Okay, the motion was made by Mr. Johnson to approve, Mr. Joe Johnson to approve 5.1, 5.4, 5.5, 5.6 on consent, and it was seconded by Mr. Foster. Any further questions or discussion on that motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. So we will now go to item 5.2, and it looks like, Philip, you're up.
Are we gonna do the BZA?
Oh, sorry.
That's fine.
Thank you. Good catch. Sorry, you're not up yet.
We'll give you a pass just.
Thank you. Thank you. We will adjourn the,
Recess.
I'm sorry, we will, I'll get it straight here.
I made that same mistake.
We will recess the Planning Commission to take up the Board of Zoning Appeals agenda. Call to order the meeting of the Board of Zoning Appeals. We have minutes that we need to approve from our July 23rd meeting, and I show Blick, Bill Johnson, and Hartman absent.
Move to approve? Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. McKay to approve. Do we have any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, same sign. We'll move on to the first item on the BZA agenda, item 2020-00019, variance to permit monument sign located at 3850 West 71st Street South. Do we have anybody that wants to hear this case, I guess, to begin with? Anybody on the commission that wants to hear this? Anybody in Century 2 that wants to hear item number 2, which is 00019?
No.
Nobody at Century 2? Anybody online virtually that would like to hear this item? Seeing none?
Move to approve agenda item 2?
Second.
Been moved by Mr. Warren, second by Ms. Miles to approve item number 2 on the BZA agenda. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those
Aye.
opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's go to item number 3, which is BZA 2020-00033, which is a variance for the sign code for a sign located at 8405 East Kellogg. Kathy?
Yes, this is for a new sign for the construction, Carpenters Regional Council, not Construction Regional Council. And they have requested, and you have, in addition to the staff report, you have on at your place two items that were sent in, one from the Carpenters Regional Council and another from Mr. Bob Kaplan's group, and I believe he is at Century 2 to speak on this. The application is to install a new pole sign because of the new construction of US 54 there, their smaller sign is not visible until you're on top of it. And so they want to increase the height 20 feet above the top rail of the elevated, which is adjustable, and then they want to increase the size to 400 square feet so that it's more visible from either direction further away so that people can make the exit. It's pretty straightforward. You have the letter from the Wichita Sign Company regarding addressing the five conditions for a variance, and I will stand for any questions.
Any questions? Mr. Foster?
Well, one thing I was curious about, Kathy, is what is the required separation between these types of sign? I'm trying to remember 300, 400 feet in distance, and that's one thing I was curious about between the two properties, the one to the east.
And you know what, I don't know exactly what that distance is, but I know that we had discussions, J.R. Cox and I had discussions about this, and there's not an issue with distance between other signs. But off the top of my head, I can't tell you what the actual distance is.
Okay. As long as there's not a conflict, that's what I
Right,
was curious.
yes, we did verify that.
Thank you.
Mr. Dewell?
Yes, is there a reason that staff does not make a recommendation to approve or decline this? Should the board determine it all five?
They granted it on
Yeah.
Commissioners,
the top of page 3, Bob. Second sentence.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Commissioners, Bob Kaplan, 1600.
Wait, just wait a minute, please. Can't hear you. Hold on. Do we have any other further questions for Kathy?
I'm assuming your familiarity.
Do we,
From
yes,
my
Mr.
book.
Foster?
And perhaps this is a question
I
for
assume-
the agent.
We're not,
assume that-
hang on just a minute. Mr. Kaplan, you don't have the floor at this moment. I'll let you know when we'll open that up for your discussion.
And this may be a question for the agent or applicant. Is this more so for identification signage, or will this also be used for off-site?
No, it is purely an identification sign.
Yes, no off-site signage, it's identification.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yeah. Seeing no questions, is the agent or applicant available? It looks like Mr. Wright.
Yes, I am.
Okay. Mr. Wright, you have 10 minutes to present your case.
I'm assuming, Commissioners, your familiarity from the booklet which I emailed. I assume that you
Mr.
received
Kaplan,
it.
Mr. Kaplan, it's still not your turn. It's not your turn yet. It's the agent or applicant, and Mr. Wright has the floor at this moment. Go ahead.
Thank you. I'll keep this as brief as possible. The Carpenters Training Center of Wichita seeks to train, certify, and educate prospective carpenters to become members of the community, and supports their families and supports the community. This sign is an on-premise sign, permittable per Ms. Morgan's suggestion and our discussion with J.R. Cox. The sign, as laid out in the cover letter in the case submitted, meets all of the criteria suggested to be granted. The current sign is no longer on the property, so the current sign is actually a non-conforming sign, and per this application suggests that the Carpenters Union will have that existing sign removed in order to install this new sign.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Wright. Do we have any questions for the agent? Yes, Mr. McKay and then Mr. Foster, or Mr. Warren.
Does the additional 400 feet exceed the sign rules?
Yes, it does. That's why they're asking for the variance. By their frontage, they would only be allowed a 100 square foot sign. But they're requesting a 400 square foot sign,
That was my
which is
question,
not,
differential.
yeah, it's not unusual for that area of Kellogg. There's a couple of the same size signs along that same stretch of Kellogg.
Okay, Mr. Foster? Sorry.
I've got a question for the agent there, Mr. Wright. Are you available?
Yes.
Given that this is simply identification signage, do you need that maximum amount of the 400 square feet if it's just simply to identify the property?
The question of need is, I don't know if that's necessarily on the table, but as the rendering shows, the digital sign is closer to 350 square feet. The additional square footage is just the identification plaque on the base of the pylon. So, in consistency with almost every car dealer along Kellogg, this sign fits right in with allowable size or as variances.
Did you have another question? Okay, Mr. Warren, or Foster, excuse me.
So can you hear me, Mr. Wright?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yes.
400 square feet is simply to identify the Carpenters Union. Is it possible that there's going to be other needs for that sign?
Okay, thank you for the question, the clarification on the question. No, the sign is absolutely to market the program offerings that the Carpenters Union has. The Carpenters Union has also allowed or offered the use of the sign to the city for Amber Alerts, city messages, and continue to be a good steward of the community, which is an ultimate goal. They'll be broadcasting their health and wellness programs and essentially recruiting members just as any company would.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Mr. Wright? Brett, I'm sorry, I didn't get your address.
It's 3526 North Comatera.
Thank you. For the record. Okay, seeing no further questions for the agent, we'll open up questions to the public. Anybody from Century 2 that would like to address this item? And you have, if you'd state your name and your address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Mr. Kaplan's scared to talk now.
No, he's not.
Commissioners, Bob Kaplan, 1600 Epic Center. For starters, please understand that this applicant is a nonprofit organization. They provide very specialized training to a specialized select group of people. This is not a destination location for its business visitors. They know where they're going when they go. It's not transient, nor do they need any street advertising or directional advertising. Under the criteria, the real property is not unique. It is not any different in character or configuration than any other property in the area. What they're worried about is location, not uniqueness. Unique means that it's one of a kind, that it's unlike any other, and it's characteristics of the property itself that must be unique, not its location. They're simply saying we're next to the flyover, so we're unique. Well, if they're unique, everybody along every flyover on Kellogg or any elevated highway in the county is unique. Secondly, it's already well identified. The entire front of the store, if I recall correctly, it's an old electrical box store, huge store. The entire front of the building has their name on it. You can see it from more than a mile away. So there's really no need for destination signing. The neighboring property that I represent is an auto dealership. We're a public venue, a shopping venue. We have to have visibility. Stevens has to have signing. So what we're doing, we're talking about granting a 400 square foot sign, 45 feet high, which is totally unnecessary, particularly when it impairs the view of my client's sign and my client's building, which is a public venue. I sent photos that demonstrate this very, very, very clearly. We're a public shopping location. Lack of a sign to the Carpenters Union, which exceeds code, does not threaten the Carpenter Union at all. It does certainly threaten Stephen Motors. As far as the criteria is concerned, it's not unique. It impairs the adjacent property. Staff and the applicant said, well, the adjacent property is a neighborhood 450 feet away. The code doesn't say neighborhood. The code said neighborhood and adjacent property. We're certainly adjacent property. If you look
Mr.
at the
Kaplan,
photo, I don't know if I.
Mr. Kaplan, your 3 minutes are up. Would you like an additional minute to wrap up?
May I have 1 minute?
Yes, you may.
We do not have a unique property. We clearly, very clearly impair the adjacent property, the Stevens Motors property. There can be no question about it. The applicant will suffer no hardship. They can have their sign. All they got to do is build a sign in compliance with the code. They don't need that extra size and they don't need that extra height. There's no reason for it. They don't meet the spirit and intent. The spirit and intent of the code is not to benefit one person at the cost of another. It's to provide a public service without that impairment. Here's what I'm telling you in conclusion, that granting greater visibility where it's not necessary while obstructing the visibility where it is critical sets a very, very bad precedent. You really want to do this because every property by an elevated highway then is entitled to a variance. If this property is entitled to a variance, that's a precedent. You can never turn one down.
Thank you, Mr. Kaplan.
Take any questions.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, do we have any other? Yes, you'll have your opportunity, Mr. Wright, in a moment, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, are there any other speakers at Century 2?
Thank you.
Thank you.
No one else at Century 2.
Is there anybody else virtually that would like to address this item? Seeing none, Mr. Wright, you have 2 minutes rebuttal.
I'm going to hit on a couple of points. First of all, uniqueness of the property. This property is absolutely unique along Kellogg. As you can see in the plat drawings that were shared earlier, the triangular section to the northwest of this property as it originally was platted has now been carved out and is owned actually by another entity, Stevens Enterprises. Therefore, the existing Carpenters Training Center sign is non-conforming because it is now an off-premise sign. It left the Carpenters Union with only 100 linear feet along Kellogg's frontage, by which sign code judges the height and size of your sign. So it is a unique property along Kellogg. Secondarily to a variance precedence being set by granting this, I would argue that the property immediately to the east of this sign was also granted a variance at one time in order to market their services and products, just as the Carpenters Union is asking for the opportunity to do now. If you allow me to share my screen, I can show you some renderings from Kellogg scaled renderings using a flight train that will show that, you know, geometrically any sign opposes or potentially blocks the view of another sign. However, this one doesn't do anything more than most every sign along Kellogg does in terms of blocking visibility of another sign.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Wright.
I don't know if you allow screen share or not, but I'm prepared to show those immediately.
Yeah, our agenda packets have the pictures that you submitted or that were submitted for your application. So, okay, we've had our rebuttal. We'll bring this back to the commission for discussion and motion?
I have a question.
Yes, Mr. McKay.
Mr. Wright, you said that the design sign that you have is 350 square feet. Is there any way, because that you could live with less than that? And I know that by the square foot front footage, but the configuration of this lot is really weird, like you said. Could you live with less than the 350?
I think the union would be appreciative, but I believe the standard along Kellogg has been set at least 300 and up for, you know, almost a dozen properties that I can think of.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Warren?
Move to approve as presented.
Second.
It's been moved by Mr. Warren to grant the variance and second by Ms. Miles. Any discussion on the motion, Mr. Foster?
I'm looking at a letter that we received from Wichita Sign Company in the staff report. And in the second paragraph, it's referring to what has created this unique condition of them losing frontage and coming down to 100 feet. But it also references allowing a maximum of 300 square feet. And it talks about the size of the sign. So that's one issue. The other issue is, this is identification sign. We're not talking huge advertising needs here. So I would make a substitute motion of up to 300 square feet and allow for the raised height for the visibility aspect.
I'll second that.
So we have a substitute motion to limit the size of the sign to 300 square feet, made by Mr. Foster, second by Mr. McKay. Is there any discussion on the substitute motion?
At the allowed height.
Yes.
Requested height.
At the requested height, yeah. Thank you. Any further discussion on the substitute motion? Seeing no further discussion, we'll vote on the substitute motion. Maybe we should do a roll call on this. Mr. Yearout, if you could call the roll,
Okay.
please.
Mr. Warren?
No.
Mr. Green?
No.
Ms. McKay?
Yes.
Ms. Gross?
Yes.
Mr. Dugal?
Yes.
Mr. Nix?
Yes.
Mr. Foster?
Yes.
Bill Johnson?
No.
Joe Johnson?
Yes.
Ms. Miles?
No.
Mr. Florence?
Yes.
3, 4, 5.
That's 7 to 4.
I have 8
8.
yeses and 4 nos.
Motion carries. The substitute motion carries. Max size of the sign will be 300 square feet. Thank you, everyone. At this point, we'll adjourn the BZA meeting and go back to our commission meeting.
afternoon, Planning Commission, Philip Ziebenbergen with Planning Staff. Item 5.2 before you is PUD 2020-00005. The applicant is seeking to establish the Youth Horizons 101st Street Campus Planned Unit Development, which would be PUD 75 if it's approved, to permit group residence general for at-risk girls. Youth Horizons, if you're familiar, has a boys camp, as they commonly call it, very near there. It's up on North Woodlawn, approximately near 117th Street, so it's actually not considerably too far away from this location. They're looking to do a very similar thing with this location, just for a girls' camp to serve at-risk girls in the community. The property, as you can see on the map on your screen, is located on the south side of 101st Street North. It's about a quarter mile east of North Hydraulic. It is out in the county, but as you can see, the majority of the property surrounding this is within the city limits of Keachai. It's in the Keachai urban area of influence. It was heard by the Keachai Planning Commission on Monday night. I'll get into that a little bit more. I'll let you know what their vote is, but I'm going to go through the presentation and talk about some of the things from the Keachai meeting in the process. Tuesday night. Monday was holiday. Well, I've got a 3-week-old. I don't know what day it is. So according to our zoning code, a group residence or group residence general as a use is defined as a group residence that is occupied by more than 15 people, including staff members and those who reside in the facility. So then a group residence as a topic is defined as a residential facility providing cooking, sleeping, and sanitary accommodations for a group of people not defined as a family on a weekly or longer basis. The typical uses for a group residence are a frat house or sorority house, dormitories, residence halls, boarding or lodging houses, children's home, which would this would be most akin to being more like a children's home, emergency shelters for the homeless or for victims of crime, abuse, or neglect. It is important to note that this use does not include group homes, which are primarily for individuals with physical or mental disabilities, or it does not include correctional placement residences, which are placements for those who are actually convicted of a crime. So it is not having to do anything with those who are actually criminals by definition. The Jim, if you go to the aerial, the site currently has one single-family home, kind of down smack in the middle. The site is at 38.8 acres, so roughly 40 acres. You can kind of see there's that white dot, kind of almost 3/4 of the way to the south on the property. That's the current single-family home. There are several accessory structures, several sheds, maybe a barn on the property as well. The property has a hedgerow around it on all 4 sides. If you drive on 101st Street, you can see the driveway, and that's really about it. It has one access off to 101st Street that takes you straight to the house, as well as some accessory structures. The portion of the property to the west, so the left-hand side of the screen, is agricultural use, and they actually will, they intend to continue to use it for agricultural use. It's a pasture, they bale it. I don't know if they plant it, but either way, they're not intending to actually make that a part of the area where they would like to build additional buildings. The eastern half of the property has the current buildings as well as a sizable pond on the property. The property is currently zoned RR rural residential, and the text of the PUD states that the kind of the high-level governing zoning regulations for property would remain at rural residential. They just want to include group residence general as a permitted use. If the site were to remain rural residential, they could do group residence by conditional use. The way this is unique is the fact that they want to put multiple additional residences on there for a total of 6, so that would be building 5 additional residences with a total occupancy of up to 48 persons. That would include staff or any other people who'd be working or living on the site. So it's not 48 girls at risk, it'd be a total population of 48 on the site. According to the agent at the Keachai meeting, he stated that they're looking at about 6 girls per residence with 2 staff members. So 8 people with 6 residences equals 48 people. The PUD drawing, Jim, if you want to go to the PUD drawing as well, it shows a 50-foot setback all the way around the property. That is much higher than anything we would ever require for most of our zoning classifications. I think their intent with the PUD drawing and showing a 50-foot setback is the indication that they don't want any type of development to be anywhere near the neighboring properties. The intent is actually to probably cluster these homes fairly close to each other within kind of the central portion of it. They're just putting a 50-foot setback around so that development can't actually encroach closer than 50 feet to the surrounding property lines. Signage in the PUD document states that it would allow one freestanding sign of 12 feet in height with 96 square feet of signage. That's per the Sedgwick County Sign Code, and that would be along 101st Street. The PUD text contains standard language for architectural controls, so everything looks and has the same general feel to it, and standard site development standards as well. The PUD language requests to have 2 openings onto 101st Street. Currently, there's just the one for the driveway. The second opening, we're actually really just looking to have a farm entrance into the agricultural field to the west. They haven't identified where exactly that drive would go. I sent this information to the County Public Works, and they're okay with it as long as they meet the county arterial distance standards of 600 feet, taking into account where driveways are also located across the street. But it generally would not be a heavily used driveway. It would just allow farm equipment to access the field without having to go through the property. The one thing where the applicant and staff differ in regards to what was stated in the text is the PUD text is asking for a plating exemption to allow one additional residence to be built before they would have to plat it. The subdivision regulations state that anytime with an unplatted property, if you want to get a building permit, you would have to plat it. And they're asking to not have to plat to allow one building to be built first, and any additional buildings after that, they would then have to plat it after that. Staff's recommendation to you today is to not allow the platting exemption. We would like to stay true to the subdivision regulations and say if they're going to build any buildings that require a building permit, that they would have to plat the property. Zoning around the site, the majority on the west, south, and east is within city limits of Keachai. I don't know what their zoning classification is, but they're large lot, single-family residential lots of pretty much a minimum of 3 to 4 or 5 acres in size, if not bigger. Most of them are developed with single-family homes and some outbuildings. Directly north across the street is within Sedgwick County and is rural residential. It's a bingo club, and I got some more information from some of the residents in the area at the Keachai meeting on Tuesday to say, like, yes, it's a bingo club, but they also, like, it's with Alcoholics Anonymous. It was kind of a opportunity to provide some community for that organization. Just thought I'd pass along for your information. But again, it's rural residential, so it's zoned what this current site is as well. So not all of the properties around the site are residential. There is something to the north that is not residential at the site. It has access off 101st Street, which is a county arterial. The site is served by Rural Water District 2. There was concerns brought up at the Keachai meeting of whether or not there'd be sufficient capacity within the Rural Water District to serve that many additional residences. The agent can delve in this too as well, but basically the answer to that question was if during the building permit application process it was determined that there was insufficient water, they would not be able to get a building permit. So that's something that really has to be worked out down the road on whether or not there's actually adequate water supply within Rural Water District 2. Wastewater would be dealt with on site. Again, there were some concerns by some neighboring residences as to how many lagoons would have to be put on site, how big would the lagoons be, where would they be located in order to adequately serve and process the wastewater and sewer from that many residences should they be built. Overall, this is in conformance with the 2035 Wichita Future Growth Concept Map in the Comprehensive Plan. It identifies the area as agricultural or vacant, but obviously there is residential development around there within the city limits of Keachai. Group residence is allowable within residential zoning in our zoning code, so it's not unlike the area around it, especially with the size of the site as it is. We feel it is fairly conducive to the use that was presented before us. Based on that, staff is recommending approval of this with the exception to not allow the platting exemption as stated in the PUD text, and that's the only red line item out in the PUD text in your staff report that's indicating that staff wants that removed from the PUD text. That is for your decision to make. Keachai decided, their recommendation was for denial. They decided that at a 5-1 vote, 4-1 vote, my apologies. The chairperson did not vote at their meeting. Russ Evie, the agent for the applicant, and I kind of looked at that and wasn't sure if there were 6 of them there, but it was a 4-1 vote. And it wasn't an abstention, he just didn't vote at the meeting. Something I wanted to clarify, it was a statement made at the Keachai meeting, and for those who are listening into this case who participated in that meeting, their chairperson stated that if Keachai were to recommend denial of this case, that it would require a supermajority vote of our planning commission to recommend approval, and that is actually an incorrect statement. With their recommendation of denial, when this goes before the Board of County Commissioners, after our planning commission hearing today, it does require a supermajority vote from the Board of County Commissioners to approve this. Regardless of protests to be filed, we'll find that out in the next 2 weeks where the protests will be submitted. But since the urban area of influence, since the small city that heard it recommended denial, the Board of County Commissioners automatically will have to have 4 or 5 votes in order to approve this case. The findings for our recommendation for approval is that the zoning around there is conducive for residential uses. This is a residential use, and considering the size and the characteristics of the site, we feel it won't have any detrimental impacts, and the governing language within the PUD document will help mitigate the detrimental impacts of the surrounding properties. It is suitable to remain rural residential and have a single-family home on it. Again, group residence general is permitted by conditional use within rural residential. They're just asking for a little bit more than just a standard group residence general use. The property is not vacant. It's had a dwelling unit on there since 1955. Again, overall, we feel like the PUD document will mitigate any negative impacts that could be development-wise based on the development of the site. I can go through the pictures on the site if you just want to slowly scroll through them, Jim. This is looking from 101st Street down the driveway to the site. Again, it's heavily wooded in the area. You really can't even see anything from 101st Street when you go through. The next picture. This is looking back towards 101st Street from where the residence is, so even when you're on property, you can't even see out to the road. You can go next picture. This is kind of the backyard area. To the left is the residence. This is kind of a play area or just a recreation area with the existing single-family residence. It's kind of looking to the south or the northeast. You can see the pond. This is the agricultural field, or I'm sorry, this is looking east. This is south of the pond, looking east on the side, just open land. You can see the heavily wooded area to the east. This is the current residence on the site, kind of in the middle of the site. Again, this is looking east at the pond that's there. This is south of the residence, but looking to the southeast. They have a whole bunch of chairs and stuff set up in some woods around there. This is looking to the south. Again, heavily wooded area. You can't even see the backyards of the residences that are to the south. This is directly across the driveway from the residence. Some accessory structures that are on the site. I think the last couple are looking west at the agricultural portion, the pasture that's on the site. With that, I can stand for any, here's looking up and down 101st Street. That's looking to the east and that's looking to the west. And I think that's it. It's a big site. Yes. With that, I can stand any questions you have for staff.
Questions for staff? Mr. Warren.
Phil, if you had a 20-acre tract you wanted to build on, does that have to be platted?
No.
So if this lot was split evenly in half, it would be 0.6 of an acre short of having the 20 acres to plat or to build without platting?
Correct.
Okay.
Actually, they would take into account the loss of the right-of-way so that they could split this into 2 lots and create 2 home sites and still maintain the 20-acre, the spirited intent of 20 acres.
And they wouldn't be required?
It's not a hard 20, it's 20 less any right-of-way.
Okay.
And that would only be able, like, if they were to split it in half, the other half that does not have a residence would be able to put one on. They would not be able to put any additional residences on the portion of the site that has the current one on there in the current zoning.
Mr. Jewell?
This may be a question for the applicant, but it doesn't look like staff's comments really address the nature of the residents there and how they get there, or are they referred to this location through the court system, or?
I'll defer to the applicant on that.
Yeah.
They'll be able to explain how
Okay.
individuals come to the site.
Mr. Nix?
So did Keachai decide to deny this based on issue of zoning or based on?
There were several members of the public who spoke at the Keachai meeting, and their general comments, and I'm sure we'll hear probably some of the same of them today, dealt with safety. They were concerned of the potential character and nature of the girls that will be living there. There was some testimony given as to some things that have happened with boys camp. And so the majority of the people who spoke are individuals who live south of the property in that subdivision off East 98th Street. The three people, specifically I remember, their backyards touch the south property line. They're just concerned about if, the girls were to come off site on their own accord, what's going to happen in terms of the safety aspects. They were concerned about, like I said, whether or not Rural Water District 2 would have enough water to service the site if it were to be fully developed. There were concerns about where and how wastewater was going to be managed on the site, the size of the lagoons or what type of other system, and if, where those were going to be put in relation to their property lines, things of that nature. Again, so I don't know. Obviously, I can't necessarily be in the mind and say exactly why they, but based on the testimony, my opinion would be it was based on the testimony that was given. Keachai doesn't have a group residence general use category in their zoning code. The closest they have is group home, which is very similar to our definition of group home that's governed by state statute. Their zoning administrator did recommend approval. His report to his planning commission was for a recommendation of approval.
Mr. Chairman, I would note,
Yes.
For the record, the Keachai zoning administrator is on another device and listening in, so if there's questions of what happened with Keachai, it probably is best to direct that to Keachai and let them convey those information. Chris Moreland is the gentleman that's online.
Yes. Mr. Warren?
Philip, I'm not recommending this, but I have a question just to see what the possibilities are. Because normally we're not looking at fencing or anything like that for this kind of a facility. But if we wanted to make that a condition of the PUD, is that within our purview to allow to make that requirement?
I'm sorry, I missed the
Screening.
Whether or not they would require a screening fence.
If we
around
were
it.
to approve a PUD, is that something that would
PUD
be?
latitude, you have the ability to add conditions and other stipulations. So if you feel something needs to be added to what's being proposed, yes, you can do that.
That's not I'm not recommending, I just wanted to know if that was possible.
Yes, it would. Yes, it is.
Any further questions? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Philip, it sounds like several of the questions you brought up about the Keachai meeting would be covered by plating. The question I've got is, let's see, comment 10 here, or condition 10 refers to interpretations to this PUD shall be done in accordance with the Unified Zoning Code. If there's only the PUD in force, is that going to make sure that those setbacks are followed? Or will plating aid in that?
Well, if the setback is drawn and approved on the PUD document, that becomes the governing document. This becomes the zoning classification, and if they set that it's a 50-foot setback, then it's a 50-foot setback.
If the property is subsequently platted and you put additional setbacks on the plat would carry a higher weight. But it would depend on what the plat would say if you ever get to that point.
Any further questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll go to the agent or applicant. Mr. Avey, if you could state your name and your address, and you have 10 minutes.
Certainly. Russ Avey, agent for the applicant for Youth Horizons with Boffman Company, 315 Ellis, Wichita, Kansas. I'll make my comments brief. I will cede the rest of my 10 minutes to several officials of Youth Horizons who are also on this go-to-meeting hearing this afternoon, and they're going to be much better able than I to address some of the specific operational type of questions that were born out of the Keachai meeting on Tuesday night. But Mr. Warren, I think straight out of the gate, answered or kind of stole my thunder on why we were requesting a platting exemption for the first residential unit. And that is simply to afford us the same rights as any other property owner owning 20 acres or more. So that's the reason for that. And as I mentioned to the Keachai Planning Commission on Tuesday night, in general terms, especially to match the existing land use pattern around us, that site would yield approximately 6 homes if we were to match again the lot size of our surrounding neighbors. So we felt that this, in keeping with the character of the neighborhood, would support 6 homes of a rural suburban style residential development that surrounds this near Sunnydale. So that's kind of the rationale between the platting exemption and why we arrived at the 6 homes housing 48 people in total. I will point out that although the majority of the discussion during the Keachai meeting was somewhat irrelevant to the zoning matter before you, there were several issues with site development. And to go to Mr. Foster's questions, none of that necessarily would be solved or benefited by platting. The setbacks will be governed by this document as opposed to the subdivision plat. In fact, we could plat less than 50-foot setbacks, and that would supersede the setbacks that we're proposing through the zoning change. Everything else, from whether or not we can obtain adequate service from rural water district number 2 to what type of on-site sewage system, all goes through the MAPCD's building permit review process. So really, quite frankly, I struggle to find a valid need for the platting at this time. Now, clearly, when this site in the future realizes its fullest potential and adds the other 4 units, then of course we would then be required to plat at that time. So I'll cede the rest of my time, and if Mr. Gardner, Mr. Williams, or the operational director for Youth Horizons residential program can further explain the fact that they provide foster care. They've been in our community providing this valuable service for years, if not decades, and some of their oversight. I will point out really briefly that 2 of the Keachai planning commissioners mentioned that they were reluctant to support the request based on the fact that I was not, unfortunately, able to answer the credentials of the staff members, nor the exact method of how at-risk youth are transferred to the care of Youth Horizons. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Gardner, et cetera, at Youth Horizons to answer some of those questions if they would at this time.
Yes, and so I'm happy to address specific questions. I want to give you some more information. The new home, we are addressing a need which is the first of its kind in Sedgwick County for girls who are in foster care, girls who are non-criminalized, I might add. We are a Christian faith-based organization.
Mr. Garner,
yes.
Your microphone really isn't conveying anything that you're saying. It's
more than one mic on?
Do you have more than one mic on, or it?
Can you hear me now?
Not well.
Not well. It's a little better, but it.
I can try. I repeat that. Can you hear me better?
Turn your speaker off. You're getting feedback.
Yes, I did turn it up. Can you hear me now?
A little better.
Okay, I will try to speak loudly. Youth Horizons is trying to address a need that is expressed to us by the Department of Children and Families, DCF. We have been providing residential care for since 1996 to non-criminalized youth. We are a faith-based organization, and we, like I say, provide mentoring for youth coming from tough circumstances. Those circumstances usually result in...
Are you in the room with other people?
Mr. Garner, are you in the same room with other people on a computer?
I am, but they're not on their system.
Yeah, because it's still just not coming through very well at all.
Let me use my computer to, is that even any better?
Little,
Is that any better?
yeah.
It's a little better, yes.
And talk slower.
Okay. So sorry. Let me try it again. Youth Horizons is addressing a concern that is brought to them by the Department of Children and Families, which is called DCF.
We're still not hearing you very well, sir. I'm sorry. Technology is wonderful, isn't it?
I'm looking for it until you can go to Central 2 or someplace.
Let me try a different device because it's plugged in right now.
Defer this for 2 weeks.
You know what to do with things like
Give me just a moment.
Yeah, it isn't fair to you, and it isn't fair to us to be able to, oops, Garner's left.
Now, sometimes if they call in just on the phone and don't use the computer, you'll get a lot better reception.
There you go.
Okay, let's see.
I might jump in here.
Okay, go ahead, Russ.
Yeah, while they're trying to get that, some of those technical glitches fixed. But among some of the two more relevant questions that I had a difficult time answering, because I just didn't have the information at the time, is that they are governed by, one of the more relevant questions was who provides oversight for this facility beyond and above Youth Horizons organization, and that is the state of Kansas's Department of Children and Families. They govern the entire foster care system in the state. So ultimately, we have a state overseer of any and all foster care activities, specifically related to this organization. They are community partners with several organizations throughout the Sedgwick County community. They assist in providing foster care facilities for at-risk girls that need a little extra care as far as teaching them the basic life skills, educational programs specifically tailored to their issues. If they had potentially been victims of sexual trafficking, for example, they have special care geared towards helping them address those types of personal issues as well. There was comments about whether or not this would generate a lot of police calls. Youth Horizons organizations mandated by the state to call in to the local law enforcement officials for a litany of different things that they have to report back to the state on. So from that standpoint, I just wanted to be on the record, especially for those people that may be tuning in from Keachai, that they do have state oversight. The other question that was most relevant was what are the credentials of the staff that will be living there, as well as other Youth Horizons mentors. They're going to be a collection of various trained professionals, including licensed social workers. They will provide 24/7 security on site. They have security, they have surveillance, as we see so frequently here in modern society. So the property will be secured from that standpoint. I know that at least one neighbor wanted us to fence the girls in. I don't think we're going to go that far, but it will be surveilled. It will have on-site security as well as the residential staff to watch these girls and make sure that they're safe, not only from outside predators coming onto the site, which was one group's concerns, as well as monitoring the whereabouts of the girls in their care. I'll pause at this point to see if there were any questions from the Planning Commission for me at this point.
We're stopping the clock at this point at 8 minutes. I think we probably had 2 minutes of time that were challenging and trying to hear Mr. Garner.
Certainly.
Now, Mr. Moody, between the two of you, can we try coming back to you, Mr. Garner, and seeing if we're able to hear you a little bit better? And I'm going to grant you 2 more minutes beyond the 10 minutes that would normally be allowed for this. Okay.
I'm not sure if you guys can hear me or not.
And who are you
my
with?
Name is Jennifer. I am Jennifer Isaacs.
Are you with Youth Horizons?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't necessarily need to speak at all, but since they're not here, I'm not sure. I just came in case there were specific questions about the property because we live there. So I don't want to speak for them, but they just asked me to be here just in case there was a question that I could answer. But if they can't get back on, I'm happy to try to answer questions to the best of my ability.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. We're trying to see if we can get somebody from either Mr. Garner or
yes, that'd be great.
Mr. Moody.
Or Mr. Williams.
Mr. Moody or Mr. Garner, you've got the floor. Okay, we don't have sound. We've got audio, we've got visual, but no audio.
Defer.
We don't read lists.
Still no joy, Mr. Moody.
Suggest they call in on the phone.
That's what they need to do. They need to
Yeah.
call in for the phone.
Do you have access? Oop.
I'll step out and try and call them and get in touch with them.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
I would suggest that we go on to those that want to speak on it and reserve this time for those that they can come back to them a little bit later.
Okay.
In effect, just come out of order and give them an opportunity in just a little bit.
Do we need to have that in the form of a motion?
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Take it a little bit out of order. All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Motion carries. If we could have, is there anybody in Century 2 that would like to address this issue?
Test.
Okay, so nobody. Is there anybody else virtually that would like to?
I think they've got some essential.
Oh, okay, all right. I didn't hear what is.
I think his mic is muted.
Okay. If you could give us your name and address, and you have 3 minutes.
You gotta turn your mic on.
Yeah, turn your mic on,
There we
please.
go.
There we go.
Hi, my name is Belinda Sharp. I live at 2200 East 98th Street North. My property is straight south of this property. Matter of fact, on the edge. My biggest concern is safety. We know these are troubled girls and they will come with their own issues. I have raised 3 children there. They have attended Valley Center High School. My boys have had run-ins with the boys' ranch, which this girls' ranch will be very similar to the boys' ranch. The boys at the high school have stolen property. They have stolen cell phones. They have stolen shoes and paper. And as recently as a Friday night at the football game, one of the boys from the ranch tried to start a fight. yes, there is a lot of concern about what is that is going to go on right near my neighborhood. I do have safety is my biggest concern. We have elderly that live in our neighborhood. We have children with multi-disabilities that are very friendly and that would let these girls in. I know that Youth Horizon says that they provide security, but we know that the boys do roam. The boys' ranch is more secluded and buffered. They sit on 80 acres. Their nearest neighbor is 200 yards, and their other one, the other house sits about a fourth of a mile away. These neighbors have to keep everything locked. The boys do roam off of the property on multiple occasions. As I have done my research in this area, I did not take this lightly. I found out that on Oliver, the boys have knocked on several residents' homes. Yes, they are supervised, but unfortunately, these kids are streetwise and they know how to get away. Yes, their houses are locked, but they still escape their houses. As I said, they do feed into the Valley Center Public School, and so will these girls. We will not only have a boys' ranch feeding into our high school, but we will also have a girls' ranch. The biggest concern will be safety. As I said, we've had a lot of personal experiences with them and as of fights. We also are concerned for the girls' safety. We are currently under process of having a large truck stop put at 85th. This is only 2 miles from that girls' ranch. They are saying they wanted to stop prostitution and human trafficking, and we all know what comes with a truck stop. If the truck stop is not approved, because this has not been approved yet, they are proposing to move it less than a mile from the girls' ranch. I do not think that Youth Horizon has done a good job at marketing or trying to get their neighbors on board. We had no clue that Youth Horizon was in fact involved. We literally thought it was just a church who wanted to help out a few girls.
Ma'am, your 3 minutes are up. Do you think you can wrap up your comments in about a minute?
I want to say thank you for your consideration of this, and I will hope you stand behind the Peach-Heights recommendation that this does not pass.
Okay, wait, do we have any questions of the speaker? Yes, Mr. Dool?
Yes, the boys' ranch that you referred to, is that on this aerial view of a map that we're looking at?
No, it's 4 miles. It's at 109th and Woodline, and it's also ran by Youth Horizon.
Okay,
and it's approximately 4 miles from the girls' ranch. It is also served by the same police force, the Sedgwick County police officers, the Peach-Heights police officers, and the Park City police officers all serve this area.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? If we could have the next speaker, please. Please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is James Williams. I live at 2300 East 98th Street North. It's a Valley Center address, 67214. My property is immediately adjacent to the south of the proposed facility. The proposed facility does not add value to the adjacent community. The Sunnydale community is a quiet residential neighborhood. The infrastructure in particular, concern to myself is that living at the end of the water line is minimal, and there are no sewage facilities. Each residence has its own lagoon. The impact of nearly doubling the adjacent population, that being the properties immediately adjacent to the proposed girls' ranch, will stress the water supply, our school systems, and the police. Our water bills and our taxes will likely to increase to compensate, and since this facility is nonprofit, it will bear none of the burden for making those necessary improvements. I'm further concerned about the resale value of the adjacent properties and, of course, in particular, mine. If this facility is to go forward, there should be plating immediately of the property and a clear plan presented to the neighborhood and to Keachai as to the size and location of the residents' homes, of the lagoons, and their position on the property, given that the 20 acres to the west will remain agricultural. The 20 acres to the east is the proposed building site, much of which is covered by the floodplain shown on your map and a pond. Of course, security is a concern, as has already been voiced. We do have a boys' home nearby, and as has been presented, there have been a few local issues with them, though I'm not particularly familiar with any of them. What provision will be provided and placed in these plans that for perpetuity, forever, limit the size of the staff and girls to 48 residents? How do we know 5 years from now it will not be petitioned to increase it or double it or some other number? Again, as I've said, the 40 acres is not all usable for these residences.
Sir, your 3 minutes.
Yes, sir. I'm sorry. I also do not.
Sir, your 3 minutes are up. Do you think you can wrap it up in about a minute?
Yes, sir, I can. I am not in favor of a fence along my property. The hedgerow that was mentioned earlier has largely died over the years, and I can see into their property from my home and from the windows in my house that view that in that direction. I do see the people moving around back there. I don't know them personally, but I see them, I see their house, and I see what's going on back there. So there is no vegetation which shields my home at this time, and nor do I want an unsightly fence in the area. I thank you for listening to me, and I'm sorry for the hesitation there. I appreciate your listening to my concerns. Thank you.
If you'd wait a minute, please. Do we have any questions of the speaker? No questions of the speaker. Thank you very much, sir. If we could have our next speaker, please. If you could state your name and address. Name and address for the record,
Good
please.
afternoon. My name is Nancy Newton. My address is 2129 East 98th Street North. I'm directly across the street from the first speaker's home, and I'm also concerned about the safety of this ranch in our neighborhood. As you can all see from the plat, the map in front of you, it's smack in the middle of single-family residential homes. They have moved out into this rural area to raise their children in a rural environment for the safety and certainly for the less traffic involvement that a city gives our neighbors. Secondly, we are concerned, like our speakers before me have asked, is a safety measure. Yes, we have the city police, we have the Parkside Police, we have Sedgwick County police in our neighborhood, but the people, or I should say the police force that will be rendering the service will be the City of Keachai Police. In Tuesday's meeting, that was not mentioned by the speaker for the service here, the police officers attested to 300 calls made to the Boys Ranch in a 2-year period. Of course, it had to do with some EMS calls, but there was a lot of other criminal activity that was being addressed in those 300 calls. So that's certainly a very high number of calls in 2 years, in which our neighborhood probably sees one every couple of years, if that. So placing this shelter in this community is going to disrupt the safety of the environment of what the neighbors have used or have built to develop a family and to have a safe a relationship with their neighbors. Yes, the neighbors in this area leave their garage doors open. They forget it sometimes, and sometimes they do it because they're working in the area. And that's gonna cause, wandering eyes and wandering items from their garages. And we would have to do a more lockdown of our property. The Board of Keachai has denied this approval of this plan, and we're hoping as representatives of the Sedgwick County Commission would do the same. Yes, planting might be a possibility for future building of the property. But again, like our speakers before me have said, it's going to result in tax rates, water rates. Our water rates have gone up every year since we've been living there. We pay over $100 or more per month, and a lot of that cost is bared on the neighbors and the homeowners in the rural tool district. Water pressure isn't the greatest. As a mom raising children and also just regular housework, there's a lot of to be desired with the water pressure. They'll just add more things.
Ma'am?
Yes, my time is up.
Yeah, thank you. Do we have any questions of the
So
speaker?
Thank you for listening for our concerns.
Are there any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. If we could have our next speaker, please.
I am on from Youth Horizons now, if you can hear me.
Okay, let me see if there's anybody else at Century 2, and then we'll come right to you. You're coming in loud and clear now.
Yes.
Is there anybody else from Century 2?
Yeah. Yes, I'm at Century 2.
Okay.
My name is Luke Hallison. I live at 2440 East 101st Street North. That is catty corner from this property. I've lived there my whole life. So yeah, there are some safety issues with the Boys Ranch. I work in Whitewater, and I have just a couple months ago seen two boys walking down the road. They made it about 3 miles before anybody from the ranch found them. Even so, after they were found, the gentleman followed them in a car. I pulled over and turned around before he got there to ask if they needed help. The gentleman in the car said no, he was from the ranch, and these boys had left, and he had the cops on the way. These boys walked 3 more miles before the cops even got there, and they were walking at a normal pace. Also, there is the 101 Club across the street. They have a lot of Boy Scout events. They have Alcoholics Anonymous events. How are you going to keep the boys and the girls away from each other across the street? Also, like I said, the boys from the Boys Ranch walked from the ranch out on Woodlawn past the ranch where the girls would be. So how are you going to keep them apart from each other? They can obviously walk from one ranch to another. It's pretty close. So, I mean, that's some safety concerns. Also about the school. You're going to have boys and girls from ranches going to the same school. How are you going to make sure that the disciplinary of the school can handle all these kids with discipline problems? That's another concern. Would they be riding the bus together? How are you going to keep them separate and from getting together? Also, I know that there are farm entrances to this property. I've farmed there, I've baled hay there. So there's already these entrances in place that they're asking for. They're already there. The farm machinery can get in. But those are some things I just want to let everybody know. Anybody have any questions?
Do we have any questions of the speaker? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Anybody else in Century 2?
That is it here.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go back to, oh yeah, thank you. Is there anybody else on another device that would like to speak? It appears not. We'll go back to...
I'm sorry. It's the Youth Horizons here.
Okay, I was just heading in your direction. If we,
Okay.
it appears as though you've got about 4 minutes left, and if you could kind of wrap up everything and maybe try to get the questions answered at the same time,
I sure will.
concerns
I
that
sure
were
will.
brought up.
And I'm deeply, I'm deeply sorry about our technology issue, but I will do my best to cover everything in the 4 minutes. You know, I want to say first of all that we have been providing residential care for foster care kids for since 1996, and have documented best practices, highly trained staff, mastery level staff, degree level staff, licensed social workers, people who provide trauma informed care as their way of doing business with kids. And so we provide a very nurturing, faith-based environment with relationship-based curriculum. Just one question that really kind of stood out to me was the what we call elopement, or boys leaving the property. One of the tactics that we employ is that if a boy chooses to leave the property, we do dispatch 911, and we follow the boys very carefully until law enforcement arrives. We stay within a general distance of supervision to make sure the boys stay safe. And so that was the tactic that was used during the time that the gentleman says that he followed for 3 miles. We were in close proximity. We knew the boys were safe, but we were waiting for the police department. In this particular program, the state says that we should be in a 1-to-7 ratio. On the girls' property that we are going to hopefully build on, our ratio will be 1-to-4 to 5 per staff per child. It will be surveillance 24/7. We will have parents, care workers on the site, in addition to a security guard there to protect each of the residents. We are going to be very strategic in terms of where we place the properties so that we are not in the closest proximity to the neighboring homes. But I want to also say, lastly, that we're in great partnership with many faith-based organizations. We're in partnership with DCF. We have a partnership with Cornerstones of Care, St. Francis Family Services, Cal Valley, and a number of community partners who help provide mentoring to the kids. We are research-based in our approach to train our staff with trauma-informed care, and we really are approaching the work to serve kids in their best interest. Let me also say that the kids that we select are not necessarily criminalized. These kids that we serve are coming from abandonment issues from their parents, or their parents' rights have been temporarily severed because of reasons not pertaining to the child. It's usually an adult issue. And so we're not taking in girls and boys who are pounding the pavement, breaking in homes, vandalizing. That is not what is happening. And you can check police records for that proof. In terms of Valley Center, our boys will go to Valley Center. Our girls will go to the Wichita Public Schools. We are very, very aware of how we're going to have to keep the kids separate, and we don't want to mix the two. But all kids are afforded a quality education in their residential school attendance area. So we will be very wise in terms of what that looks like in terms of their schooling. We house most of our kids on property through virtual learning. And so most of our kids don't even attend the public school system. If the kid is able to do so, they're entitled to a least restrictive environment for education, and it is their privilege to go to a public school. Those kids that we feel like need some emotional support, we keep on our property, and we provide educational services through a qualified teacher.
Your time has expired. If you could kind of wrap it up here in a minute, and then we'll bring it back to the commission for action.
One of the things I want you to keep in mind is how did this come about? This was a gift to the community. a late philanthropist, Keith Wren, who lived on the property, gifted this property to us, and he wanted us to serve the vulnerable populations, and he precisely asked that we serve the population of vulnerable girls. Again, we're going to be very careful in terms of who we select because we want to make sure that our services that we can provide will be most effective and targeted for the girls who need it the most and who we can make a difference in their lives.
Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. Do we have any questions of the speaker? Yes, Mr. Warren.
Number one, I want to make sure I'm talking, is this Mr. Moody I'm talking to?
No, I'm Robert. I'm the president of Youth Horizons. I'm using Mr. Moody's device.
Okay, and your name again?
I'm Robert Garner, the current president of Youth Horizons.
Okay. Mr. Garner, you are familiar with the boys' facility for Youth Horizons then?
Yes, sir, I am.
Okay, one of the comments that was made by the other speakers was there were 300 calls over a 2-year period. Does that sound about right? And if so, what was do you have any idea what the nature of those kind of calls were? Were they, like you just said, where kids walked off and you called because they were off premises?
Yes, and so oftentimes, you know, I don't know the actual number. 300 seems extremely high. We are mandated to call a 911 for reasons that are appropriate. Oftentimes, we want our kids to come in contact with law enforcement in some levels because we want them to understand the implications of their behavior. And oftentimes the officers they want to come out. They want to be proactive with the boys, and oftentimes they don't transport them to JIAC. Oftentimes it ends with just a conversation. But I will tell you, there's been no boy from our property since we started that have left our property and become vandals in any other area around the town. So the 300 calls seems a bit high to me, but I will tell you unapologetically so that we will call law enforcement if we need some level of intervention. But oftentimes, like I tell you, 9 out of 10 times, the kids stay on property and the officers will leave.
Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Duell.
I just want to make clear for myself, where do these girls come from? Are they placed there by the court system, by DCF, or other sources?
Yeah, that's great. Great question. We receive our girls from the foster care system, which is not necessarily the courts. We engage a partnership with mostly St. Francis, and I believe Nate Conklin is online right now. St. Francis gives us most of our kids, also Call Valley, and an organization called TFI. They are providers of foster care services, and so those are the partners who we get our kids from, not the court system.
Thank you.
Do we have any? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Mr. Garner, please describe how the girls would successfully complete your program and where they go once they finish the program.
That's a great question, sir. Thank you for asking that also. It is our hope that when the girls leave our program that they reintegrate back with their families, first of all. Oftentimes, unfortunately, the rights of the parent and the child have been severed, and we will keep the children and we will launch them at age 18 and sometimes age 20, 21. We have a continuum of service that really addresses their developmental needs. This program is a YRC2 program, and then we move on into transitional living, and then we move on into independent living. In each of those stages, the girls will master those programs before they're actually launched into the independent living community. We work in partnership with St. Francis primarily and their case management system in order to determine if the girls are ready to move to the next level. If we'll refer to at some point the manual on the programs that DCF offers. YRC2 is the first level. It moves to transitional living, and then it moves to the level of independent living, and that's the continuum that we operate and move through.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? We'll bring it back to the commission for a discussion and action. Yes, Mr. Warren?
I'll start off. There's a number of questions on the table here. The first one being whether or not plating would be necessary. This is close enough to 20 acres that I would give them the benefit of the doubt that if they wanted to build one facility without going, my personal feeling is that plating would be a good idea for them, but I don't know that it's necessary. Certainly our rules allow for a property to be built on 20 acres, and this is close enough to that I would be willing to forego that issue. Should we be willing to go forward? The next issue here has to do with density, and this property is certainly large enough, based on the number of properties that they're going to go on, to be in line with properties around it. There's enough land for each house that it would be something somewhat similar to what they've got from that standpoint. I understand the fear of property damage, but we live in a society that's got that, whether you've got kids in a foster care facility or you got a neighbor I've had neighbors that moved in because they had enough money to rent the property next door to me, and they moved in, and I had problems. And so I have a hard time pinpointing out here, denying somebody the right to live in a country setting that I think would be beneficial for anybody to have, and I think that we owe it to these gals, give them the opportunity if the organization behind it is doing all the right things. And Youth Horizons has got a long history of doing things the right way. So I would move to approve as presented.
Second. And in your motion, it would include
the right to build one building without plating.
Okay, and that still has a second? Okay, so it's moved by Mr. Warren, second by Mr. Dool, to approve and to allow one residence to be built, waiving the portion of the...
I want to make sure that it's clear. What you're saying is it allows one additional building to be built without plating, but if they want to build more than that, a plat will be required.
Absolutely. The regular rules apply.
Okay, and it's been seconded. Any comments, any discussion on the motion? Yes, Ms. Miles.
I think the only thing that I want to say is I want to talk a minute about the golden rules. And I want to make sure that when we make a decision about this case, that we have looked at the golden rules in regards to how they apply to this case. Looking at golden rule number 1, zoning uses and character of the neighborhood, I think that this facility certainly is a great use and fits the character of the neighborhood. Number 2, suitability of the subject property for use. I think it's a great fit, and I think it's quite suitable for this property. I think what better of a place to have these kids, have the opportunity to live. And number 3, how will it detrimentally affect nearby property? I really don't see a detrimental effect to nearby property. Moving on to number 6, conformance to the comprehensive plan. I think that this definitely conforms to the comprehensive plan. Golden rule number 7, impact on the community facilities that are around that and services. I don't see that this is going to have a huge negative impact on that as well. And I just wanted to make sure that that information is added as it applies to the golden rules. Thank you.
Mr. Joe Johnson.
I just wanted to say I have great respect for Robert Garner, and I think Youth Horizons is lucky to have him as their director, and I think he'll carry out a vision for this property that will be very beneficial to all the residents that pass through there. Thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? Yes, Mr. McKay.
A while ago, one of the speakers, the name
talked about the voting, if we vote against Keachai recommending for denial, and we vote, let's say we vote in approval, is the 4/5 vote at the county? It's not unless they vote.
Under the Unified Zoning Code, when you're in a zoning action that's in an area of influence of a small city, that city's has a right to review and comment, and if they recommend denial, that forces a supermajority vote or 4 to 5 at the county commission level. It has no bearing on what the planning commission does. You have the latitude to either vote to recommend approval, recommend denial, or whatever way you want to go.
I thought only in the case that we went against what the recommendation was and the city then had to have 4/5. But I understand where you're coming from now.
Yeah.
Thank you.
This is Justin Wagoner. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
I would supplement what Dave Yearout said. A few years ago, we did amend the urban area of influence zoning code. The first time, he's right, the first time that it goes to the county commission. And again, this is putting aside the issue of if there's a protest. But the second time, if the county commission, for example, would refer it back to the planning commission and it would come back to the county commission, the negative recommendation of the city of Keachai can become overcome with a simple majority vote of the county commission. Does
Okay.
not the supermajority does not stick around.
That's for the
second time
clarification.
county commission hears it.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, and I like your umbrella hat. Looks very nice.
Very trippy. Very, very trippy.
Yes.
It does look like that.
Wonderful. Okay. Any other discussion on the motion? Well, I'll go ahead and call a motion. All those in favor of the motion, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed,
Aye.
nay. Motion carries unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, if I can, I want to make a clarification on we have 11 members here, not 12. That was my error. So this one passes 11-0, but on the BCA case, it was a 7-4 vote, not 8-4.
Yeah, I thought I'd counted 7 yays, so
Yeah.
thank you for going back on that.
We knew one of you didn't know how to count.
I ran out of fingers and or
I'm
toes.
eligible for senior moments, it's okay.
Okay, we could have the next case presented. It looks like Kathy is on her way to the podium.
Kathy Morgan for the planning staff. This is a SF5 residential single family to TF3. The staff report reflects what we have been, what the commission has been considering the last couple of times we've done this with a protective overlay that helps or that provides architectural design guidelines and how the structure sits on the site, that type of thing. Jim, will you go to the next picture? It is next. It is within the urban infill design, and it's within the center area. And next, please. It is appropriate for residential. The house that was at this location burned, and they've torn it down, and now the new owner wants to build a new one-story. It appears from, and you have in your packet, it appears a one-story duplex. You have an elevation and a site plan. And so the staff is recommending approval of the zone change with the protective overlay conditions that the front of the garage, or the garage, is set back maybe a little bit more than similar to what we did on what the commission approved on 9th Street and Gal, I think it was, and appropriate siding materials, that type of thing. I did have one, and you should have had that in your packet, an email from a neighbor, and he was concerned about maybe fencing whether or not the duplex was going to be two-story, but it appears from the site plan or the elevation that was provided by the applicant that it is only going to be a single story. And Kirk was with us earlier. I don't know if he is still here or not, but I would be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Jim, would you go through the slides to show the surrounding properties? So they would all have the same front setback. This is immediately to the west of the site. Across the street, looking west. So, you know, gabled houses, that type of thing. So what he has shown here with the hip gable and the front gable on the garages would be in keeping with the architectural context of the neighborhood. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Foster.
Kathy, I'm looking at the final sheet of the staff report, and we see a rendering that shows a pretty massive impact of the garages on the street frontage. My question is, how would they modify this to meet the requirement of the no greater than 50% of the garage faces towards the street?
Well, I don't know. That's not from, I don't know how that I would be able to answer that.
I think we'd have the applicant address what he's got in mind.
Second question is, where's the closest TF3 zoning to this property?
I believe I wrote in the staff report that, let's see. It's not, it's probably north of Pawnee. It didn't, I think what was more important to notice was the large retail corner there at Pawnee and Seneca. No, yeah. Yes, Pawnee and Seneca, and then if you look in the upper left, you have a middle school and an elementary school that is within walking distance of that. So that would, you know, that would support staff's recommendation to allow TF3 for the density in the neighborhood. But I don't know, there must have not been any within 1,000 feet, or I would have noted that.
Any other questions for staff? Yes, Mr. Joe Johnson.
Why we're hearing this? What?
Because Mr. Foster.
I think there were some people that,
What, at Century 2?
I think, I'm not sure where, but.
No. No.
The applicant is online.
Mr. Foster wanted to.
It's
hear.
Foster's fault.
So, but Kirk is with us if you,
Yes, I was gonna.
okay,
saw that he
I
was
didn't
there.
know if you saw it.
Yeah. Any other questions? Seeing none, we have agent or applicant. Kurt, you're up.
I'm just here to answer any questions that anybody might have. I don't really have anything else to add besides what Kathy's gone over with you guys.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Foster, did you have a question for the agent?
I don't know if it's fair to ask the question how he's gonna meet that 50%. I think he needs to figure that out on his own.
Okay.
But
Yeah, as far as, I mean, I can say fencing won't be a problem. We always do fencing. So as the neighbor was concerned about, and if we need to change the architectural plan a little bit to give that 50% rule for the garages, we can accommodate that. This is kind of just a footprint of other units that we've done in the past, and we can do some tweaking to accommodate you guys.
Okay.
Yes, we did have discussion about the items in the protective overlay.
Okay. Were there any questions for the applicant? Seeing none, thank you. Kirk, if you want to hang on a little bit.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, is there anybody in Century 2 that would like to speak to this item?
No one at Century 2.
Nobody? Anybody virtually? Seeing none, we don't, you don't have any rebuttal probably, since there weren't any concerns or questions, so we'll bring it back. Yes, Mr. Foster.
I think the main reason I wanted to hear this case is that it's unique relative to other cases that we've heard in several instances. One is there's not TF3 nearby whatsoever. The second is this is a property that burned down. In other cases that we've listened to, I remember one, the property had been vacant for 20 years, so there's a definite need for development. And if you go around and look at the neighborhood, it's a fairly nice, neat neighborhood with single-family housing.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of seeing this, you might equate this to spot zoning of this as an intrusion. Now, I'm not bringing that up in opposition to the concept that we've all agreed upon for duplexes and things, but this one struck me as unique. And so I would appreciate some discussion on that.
Mr. Bill Johnson.
I guess my thought is this has been public hearing, signs put up, letters sent out to neighbors, and we have no opposition. So I don't see a problem with it.
Yeah. I agree. Anybody else have any thoughts on that? The other Johnson and Johnson.
I just made a motion. I made a motion out of order, probably.
Okay. There's a motion to approve.
Second.
There was motion made by Mr. Joe Johnson, second by Mr. Bill Johnson. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
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 All those opposed, nay. Motion carries unanimously, and yes, Mr.
I
Ura.
just want to note that Mr. Florence has left the meeting, so
Looks like
he
he's
did not
dropped out.
participate, yes.
Yeah, so the vote was unanimous, what, 10?
10-0.
10-0. Do we have any other matters that we need to address? Did you find out anything, Scott, about the issue we talked about earlier?
I sent an email to security and I'll let you know when I hear back.
Okay.
It's about access passes. I just want to call everyone about access.
Okay. And then I guess one more thing, the committees that we've got, will those stay the same with the exception of a couple of adjustments, or how will that be dealt with? Because I know we've got probably subdivision committee next week.
Let me circle up with Dave and let you have any insights you want right now.
We'll get communication out to everyone regarding what happens with the committee assignments now that we've changed officers.
Okay.
We do understand that some folks do desire some changes, so we'll take that into account.
All right, thank you. Mr.
The pay
Foster?
doesn't change.
What?
The pay doesn't change.
I know. Hey, Kirk, thank you very much. Kirk, thank you very much for hanging on there. Yeah. Okay, Mr. Foster?
I just wanted to check with you as chairman there. At the subdivision level, at the next meeting, we're looking to find 2 advanced plans members to serve as the alternates in case we do not have a quorum for a subdivision meeting. And I'd like to visit with you on who those 2 might be.
Okay. All right. All right.
Is the committee assignments, are they assigned by the chairman?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
Your
Well,
job.
Everybody's gonna stay the same unless I hear otherwise. And staff will put that list together for me, I'm sure. So, if there's nothing else,